A waitress offends Elon Musk at a high-end restaurant, unaware that he was the owner. She launched into a critique of Elon Musk, questioning his wealth, his influence, and his purported empathy for everyday individuals, only to come to the unfortunate realization that he wasn't merely a client. He was her superior. The establishment exuded a subtle elegance. Soft jazz melodies floated through the air, while gentle ambient lighting enveloped the polished tables in a cozy embrace. This was not the sort of location one stumbled upon by chance. It was a place, one where bookings were made weeks ahead, where the staff moved gracefully across the room with silent precision, and where a single meal could surpass the weekly grocery expenses of some individuals. This evening, the patrons comprised a blend of established wealth, driven professionals, and a handful of famous faces who had discovered this hidden gem in the city, a sanctuary where they could enjoy a meal away from the relentless gaze of the paparazzi. Everything flowed seamlessly until he entered the scene. He stood out from the typical guests. He wore no custom suit, nor did an extravagant watch reveal itself from beneath his sleeve. Instead, he donned a plain t-shirt, a bit crumpled, matched with jeans and sneakers that had undoubtedly experienced more vibrant times. His hair was slightly tousled, and he carried himself with the easy demeanor of someone who didn't place much importance on looks. At first glance, he might have seemed like a software engineer who had stumbled in by accident, yet the hostess identified him right away. "Who is Elon Musk?" she inquired, her tone scarcely rising above a murmur. He offered a slight nod, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes at the way her gaze expanded. "Just a table for one, please?" The pause was fleeting. She was well aware of the procedure. All guests were to receive the same exceptional level of service, irrespective of their status. Yet, a surge of anxious excitement washed over her as she guided him to a quiet table by the window. As soon as he took his seat, the murmurs started. Not from the other guests, as most of them were too accustomed to wealth and power to be affected, but rather from the staff. The head waiter cast a subtle look his way, then shifted his gaze toward the kitchen. A bartender whispered to a coworker, and in no time, half the staff in the restaurant was aware that the wealthiest man on the planet had just settled into their dining area. And then she appeared. Maya had spent roughly 6 months employed at the restaurant. With her youthful spirit and boldness, she was never shy about expressing her thoughts, exuding a confidence that set her apart from the crowd. Clients either adored her or considered her demeanor somewhat overwhelming. However, it was evident that Maya was not one to shy away from speaking her mind. As she lifted the menu and approached Elon's table, she instantly recognized him. She had encountered his visage in numerous news pieces, listened to his name in ceaseless discussions, and more than once, expressed her frustrations about him on social platforms. Out of everyone he had to stroll into her area, she inhaled deeply and donned her most polished smile. "Good evening, and thank you for joining us." She held back. Naturally, he was already familiar with this place. She managed a strained smile. "Are you certain about your choice? Or would you prefer some suggestions?" Elon glanced away from the menu, his face a mask of mystery. "I'll begin with a refreshing sparkling water, and perhaps indulge in the chef's special for this evening." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Do you have that much faith in the chef?" A subtle grin tugged at the edges of his mouth. "I enjoy observing the creativity that emerges when individuals are given complete freedom." She clutched the menu with determination. She had devoted the last several years passionately criticizing billionaires like him. In her thoughts, they seemed disconnected, amassing riches while ordinary individuals faced hardships. And now, here he was, seated with ease in one of the priciest dining establishments in the city, effortlessly selecting whatever his heart desired. She paused briefly before exclaiming, "I suppose that's simple enough when finances aren't an issue." A moment of silence lingered. Elon locked eyes with her, yet any hint of offense remained hidden beneath his calm demeanor. Instead, he reclined a bit in his chair, observing her intently. "I guess that's the case." Maya realized she ought to halt at that point. Adherence to professionalism and a commitment to politeness were the guiding principles. Yet, there was an edge to her irritation at his casual reply. She released a soft laugh, gently shaking her head. It must be quite pleasant, wouldn't you say? Having the freedom to spend a few thousand on a meal without a second thought. A short distance away, a pair of patrons discreetly cast their eyes toward them. They weren't exactly gazing openly. This was the sort of setting where individuals feigned ignorance. Yet they were attentive. Elon, in contrast, maintained a calm demeanor. He appeared to be somewhat entertained, if anything. Is that really all there is to money? He inquired. Maya shrugged, pretending not to care. When you accumulate a certain amount, the perception of reality begins to shift subtly. Another pause lingered, extending just a bit too long. For a fleeting moment, she questioned whether she had overstepped. Yet he merely nodded, as though cataloging her remark for future reference. Yet there was an unsettling quality to his actions, and the evening was only beginning. Maya strode back to the server station, her jaw clenched. She sensed the warmth in her chest, that well-known surge of excitement that accompanied her candid expressions. Yet there was something in the way he had gazed at her, so composed, so untroubled, that stirred a sense of discomfort within her. Is everything all right? Her colleague Jason whispered, arranging a handful of plates behind her. He had overheard a portion of the conversation. She let out a quick breath. He aligns perfectly with my expectations. Disengaged, as if none of this truly exists for him. Jason cast a quick look at Elon, who was now nonchalantly scrolling through his phone, utterly unfazed. Watch out, that guy might just purchase the entire block on a whim. Maya emitted a humorless chuckle. Perhaps he has already done so. She glanced back at Elon's table. The meal arrived, beautifully arranged and ready to be savored. A signature dish was personally delivered by the chef. Slow-braised short rib accompanied by a rich red wine reduction. Typically, visitors expressed their admiration for the taste, praising the softness of the meat and the depth of the sauce. Elon, on the other hand, showed little to no response. He savored the bite, letting it linger on his palate, then nodded subtly, as if affirming a quiet realization within. Maya stepped forward once more, resolute in her intention to maintain a professional demeanor this time. How is everything going? He placed his fork down. It's quite satisfactory. That was the end.
No commendation, no detel.
Simply excellent. Maya sealed her lips tightly. It's wonderful to hear that. Just as she was about to turn away, Elon called out once more. It seems you don't have a high opinion of me, do you? His tone carried a sense of lightness, tinged with curiosity. He felt no anger. He seemed genuinely amused, if anything. Maya tensed up. She found it unusual for customers to confront her in such a manner. Many individuals, particularly those of affluence, either overlooked her or completely disregarded her. Yet he stood apart. He had observed. She claimed to be neutral, but that was not the truth. Elon let out a soft laugh. Absolutely, you do. A spark of annoyance ignited within her. She loathed the manner in which he expressed it, as if he were deciphering her, as though she were a riddle he had already unraveled. You know, she said, tilting her head slightly, it's fascinating to observe how those with immense wealth often engage in discussions about innovation and the future, yet they appear to overlook the challenges faced by individuals who are struggling in the present moment. Elon held back his response for a moment. He savored another bite of his meal, swallowed thoughtfully, and then turned his gaze back to her. What leads you to believe that I don't care? Maya exhaled sharply.
I'm uncertain.
Perhaps it's because individuals are juggling multiple jobs just to afford their rent, while others are launching rockets into the cosmos. The words escaped her lips with an unexpected edge. For the first time, the discussion drew the interest of those at nearby tables. A handful of guests cast subtle looks their way. A man meticulously adjusted his napkin, feigning disinterest, as a woman on the opposite side of the room subtly shook her head. Jason, observing from the server station, opened his eyes wide. He silently formed the words, "What are you doing?" Yet Maya chose to disregard him. Elon inclined his body slightly, placing his arms upon the table. His expression was calm, yet there was an intensity in his eyes, a keen awareness, as if he were assessing her closely. Do you operate a vehicle? He inquired abruptly. Maya blinked, momentarily disoriented by the inquiry. Excuse me? A vehicle, he reiterated. Is it in your possession? After a moment of uncertainty, she gave a slight nod. Indeed. Which one? Gas or electric? Gas, Elon said with a casual shrug. Then you supported my rival. Maya scowled. What are you trying to convey? His argument was that it's simple to pass judgment on others when you're not close to their situation. However, once you enter the real world, everything becomes more intricate. Maya crossed her arms. What does it matter? So, does that imply that no one is permitted to challenge you? Absolutely not, he replied. I embrace it. However, if you intend to confront me, ensure that your own hands are untainted. Her stomach nodded. She couldn't quite pinpoint the reason, but his calm and certain delivery left her feeling unsettled. For the first time since their dialogue began, Maya sensed that she could be the one on the back foot, and Elon was acutely aware of it. Maya tightened her jaw, her fingers wrapping around her notepad with a fierce intensity. This was unfamiliar to her. A customer skillfully redirecting the dialogue, creating the impression that she was the one under scrutiny. Typically, when she delivered a cutting comment about the ultra-rich, others either nodded in agreement or chose to overlook it. However, Elon had a captivating presence, which only served to frustrate her. She squared her shoulders, resolute in her decision to maintain control. No matter how you spin it, the reality is that individuals like you are free from the concerns that occupy our minds. Expenses, obligations, medical needs, you can't truly understand that experience. Elon inclined his head just a bit, observing her intently. Then, in a voice so composed it nearly seemed indifferent, he inquired, How much do you believe I had when I began? Maya emitted a humorless chuckle. I see we're diving into the timeless tale of the self-made billionaire. From humble beginnings, you forged your path to success. A pair of patrons cast another look their way. Even the bartender paused mid-pour, captivated by the unfolding scene. Elon remained unfazed by the sarcasm. It's not entirely absent, yet it's not quite as abundant as you might assume. Maya gave a slight shake of her head. Honestly, I'm not interested in hearing about your struggle stories. Ultimately, you remain in a position of prominence, while the rest of us navigate our daily challenges. Honestly, when was the last time you truly engaged in a conversation with someone earning minimum wage? Elon lifted his sparkling water to his lips, savoring the moment before placing the glass down gently, the sound of a soft clink echoing in the air. The reply came swiftly and effortlessly, leaving her momentarily stunned as she tried to comprehend it. For the very first time, words eluded her grasp. The quiet lingered between them. The atmosphere in the restaurant was so charged, it felt palpable. Even those who had been attempting to feign disinterest were completely captivated now. Then Maya took an action that she likely ought to have avoided. She chuckled softly, not a genuine laugh, but rather one of those biting, humorless chuckles that escape when someone is so frustrated they can't find another way to respond. Do you think this counts? She inquired, waving her hand dismissively at the environment around them. We're at one of the priciest dining spots in the city, and here you are enjoying a meal that costs $200. You don't genuinely care about individuals like me. You merely wish to convey an impression of understanding. Jason, observing from the server station, massaged his temples. He understood that Maya often took things to the extreme. However, this marked the end of a career. Elon, nonetheless, maintained his poise entirely. He concealed any signs of anger. Instead, he reclined in his chair, a subtle, understanding smile playing on his lips. What is it that you desire? He inquired. Maya scowled. What is happening? You've dedicated the past 10 minutes to outlining the flaws of individuals like myself. What is it that you desire? What is the answer? Maya parted her lips, only to seal them once more. She was clear about her message. Just compensation, improved workplace environments, and reasonable cost of living. Yet, there was an intensity in his gaze that caused her to pause, as if he had posed the same question countless times, each time met with silence instead of a genuine response. She despised that. She finally said, "I want people like you to stop feigning concern. Just be truthful about it." Elon offered a subtle nod, seemingly reflecting on her words. "Would it be preferable if I were indifferent?" Maya's eyes fluttered open and closed. "Excuse me? I would simply acknowledge your correctness. I have no interest in that. I engage in my pursuits, and that concludes it. Would that bring you some comfort?" Her brow furrowed. "That's not the case, as that's the nature of people," Elon continued. "When assistance is offered, it often leads to accusations of inadequacy. And when they offer no assistance whatsoever, they face accusations of selfishness. No matter the circumstances, individuals like you will consistently discover a reason to feel anger." Maya sensed her grip tighten. "That's not what I meant." "But it's all right," Elon interjected, cutting her off. "I understand. Change isn't truly what you seek. It seems you're looking for a target for your frustrations." In an instant, he shifted the entire dialogue to work in his favor. Maya sensed her heartbeat thrumming in her ears, warmth flooding her cheeks. She felt the urge to respond, to articulate her thoughts. Yet, in that moment, she found herself without words. And he was aware of it. Maya remained motionless, clutching her notepad with such intensity that her knuckles turned pale. The burden of the dialogue bore down on her, yet she refused to concede defeat. She let out a quick breath and compelled herself to utter the words. "That seems unjust," she whispered, her tone softer yet resolute. "You're misinterpreting what I said." Elon raised an eyebrow, yet his demeanor stayed unchanged. "Could it be that I am?" Maya felt a knot in her stomach. She had devoted countless hours criticizing billionaires, firmly convinced of their indifference, that she hadn't considered the chance that one of them could actually confront her. He wasn't dismissing her. He remained calm. He captivated the audience. This only added to the frustration. "No matter how you frame it," she insisted, striving to maintain her composure, "individuals like you continue to hold influence, while those like me remain without it. That is the distinction." For the first time, there was a subtle change in Elon's expression. His lips came together in contemplation, as though he had just encountered an unexpected revelation. With a fluid motion, he retrieved his phone from his pocket and set it down face up on the table. "You know," he said, tapping the screen, "I once brought on someone who dedicated months to disparaging me online, hurling every insult imaginable, and lamenting about how I was destroying the world." Maya squinted her eyes. "So what? Did you intend to impose a punishment on him?" "Absolutely not." Elon locked his gaze onto hers with unwavering intensity. "I brought him on board due to the quality of his ideas." Maya's eyes fluttered open and closed. "He expressed grievances much like you," Elon went on. "However, in contrast to you, he possessed answers. Rather than merely engaging in debate, he created something superior." Maya tightened her jaw. "What does it matter? Are you suggesting that I should simply express gratitude and remain silent?" Elon's lips curled into a subtle smile. "No, I'm suggesting that you take action rather than just discussing it." The impact of the words was more profound than she had anticipated. "Listen," Elon said, reclining slightly, his tone steady yet assertive. "I understand. The system has its shortcomings. Life often presents us with inequities. However, expressing your disdain while sitting here won't resolve anything. Are you seeking transformation? Bring it to life. Or at the very least, devise a more constructive approach than merely placing the blame on me." Maya began to speak, but a voice from behind interrupted her. "Maya." She pivoted. The restaurant manager, a robust figure clad in a meticulously tailored suit, positioned himself by the bar, his face reflecting a blend of worry and restrained irritation. Jason, positioned a short distance away, averted his gaze from her. Maya felt a sudden jolt in her stomach. "Could you come over here for a moment?" the manager inquired, though it was far from a mere request. Suddenly, the room seemed to shrink around me. She sensed the heavy gaze of the other diner, the tension coiling around her like a constricting vine. She glanced back at Elon, hoping to catch a glimpse of some reaction. Anger, smugness, anything. But his expression stayed inscrutable. She took a deep breath, steeling herself to maintain her composure as she turned away from the table. Yet, in that moment, a flicker of regret stirred within her. Maya trailed behind the manager into the dimly lit back hallway, her heart racing in her chest. The gentle murmur of chatter from the dining room dwindled as the door clicked softly into place behind them. As soon as they found themselves in solitude, he exhaled slowly, carefully pinching the bridge of his nose. "Are you aware of what you've just done?" he inquired, maintaining a tone that was both subdued and resolute. Maya folded her arms across her chest. "I didn't take any action. I was just conversing with a client." The manager emitted a dry, humorless laugh. "A client, Maya? That is Elon Musk. You went beyond mere conversation. You presented your case before the whole establishment. Are you aware of how unappealing that appears?" Maya tightened her jaw. "What does it matter? He's merely another individual with wealth. Why does everyone behave as if he's beyond reach?" The manager's face grew stern. "Because he's more than just a wealthy individual. This place is his." The words struck her with the force of a blow to the gut. For a moment, she wondered if she had misunderstood him. But then, as the gravity of the declaration sank in, her breath hitched in her throat. "Excuse me?" she murmured. The manager cast her a knowing glance. "Indeed, this dining establishment? The one you've been toiling away at for half a year? It belongs to him. He possesses it. You didn't merely speak out to a wealthy individual. You disrespected your superior." Maya's stomach churned violently, leaving her on the brink of nausea. She cast a quick look over her shoulder at the dining room, her thoughts swirling in a frenzy. He was aware. He was aware all along and chose to remain silent. The recollection of his serene, inscrutable demeanor flickered in her mind. He allowed her to sink further and further into her own words. His approach of posing questions to her rather than dismissing her was noteworthy. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. The manager let out a weary sigh, his fingers pressing against his temples. "Listen, I can't predict the future, but if he requests that I let you go, I won't have a choice." Maya experienced a surge of anxiety, yet she suppressed it. "Hold on, I don't think he appeared that upset. He was merely conversing." "Indeed." The manager lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "So, what's the reason he wants to talk to you before he departs?" Maya's breath caught in her throat. "What did he say?" "He inquired about your presence. He mentioned he wanted to chat before he leaves." The atmosphere enveloped her like a heavy blanket. Her chest constricted. She reflected on each word she had uttered at that table. Each cutting comment, every obstacle, every presumption she had formed regarding him. All the while he remained there, allowing her to speak, fully aware of his true identity. The anxiety gripped her throat tightly. If she lost this job, her situation would be dire. With rent already stretching my budget, securing another waitressing job at a venue like this would prove to be quite a challenge. She inhaled unsteadily. "Very well," she replied. "At last, I will have a conversation with him." The manager cast her a final glance, one imbued with unmistakable caution, before moving aside. Maya squared her shoulders, attempting to push aside the knot in her stomach as she made her way back to the dining room. With each step, she sensed the looming burden of what lay ahead. Maya returned to the bustling restaurant floor. Her stomach churned with anxiety. As she stepped back inside, the intensity of her colleagues' gazes enveloped her. Jason averted his gaze, feigning concentration on the task of stacking glasses. A handful of the other waitstaff whispered quietly to one another, steering clear of eye contact. At Elon's table, the remnants of his meal lingered in the soft glow of the flickering candlelight. As he savored the final sip of his sparkling water, he caught sight of her making her way toward him. For just a brief moment, she paused, then straightened her posture and approached him with determination. "Did you want to have a conversation?" she inquired, maintaining a steady tone. Elon placed his glass down with care. "I certainly did." Maya tightened her fists behind her back. If you intend to let me go, please just be straightforward about it. Elon regarded her intently for a moment, then let out a breath through his nostrils. Not a sigh, but rather a chuckle. Do you really believe I would let go of you just for expressing your thoughts? Maya's eyes fluttered open. Well, of course. He reclined, crossing his arms with a sense of contemplation. If I dismissed everyone who held a different opinion, I would find myself managing my businesses in solitude. Maya adjusted her stance. She found herself taken aback, realizing that her expectations had not prepared her for this moment. Elon pressed on, his tone steady yet incisive. The issue lies not in your possession of opinions. Your assumptions are excessive. Maya took a deep breath. He continued, suggesting that you thought I was indifferent. You think I'm unfamiliar with the experience of hardship. You thought I was merely a disconnected billionaire tossing cash without a care. I allowed you to make your assumptions, curious to see if you would ever pause to think that you could be mistaken. Maya sensed a flush creeping across her cheeks. For the first time, uncertainty clouded her response. Elon drummed his fingers softly on the table. May I pose a question to you? What are your aspirations for your future? Maya stared at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Excuse me? What is it that you desire? He reiterated. Your views on the world are evidently quite pronounced. What are your plans for them? Maya paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. I'm uncertain. I truly desire for improvements in people's lives. Elon acknowledged with a nod. Well-articulated response. How are you bringing that to fruition? She parted her lips, then sealed them again. He inclined his head ever so slightly. Are you embarking on a new endeavor? Creating something? Assisting another person? Or are you merely positioned in a restaurant, engaging in disputes with unfamiliar faces because it gives you a sense of purpose? The impact of the words was more profound than she had anticipated. Elon allowed the silence to stretch for a moment before he spoke once more. I don't dismiss individuals for expressing their views, but I do let go of those who fail to grow. Maya sensed her breath catch in her throat. What does that imply? He stated that you have a couple of options. You can continue to harbor resentment towards the world and allow that bitterness to consume you. Alternatively, it can be utilized. Channel that frustration into something productive rather than directing it at the nearest wealthy individual you encounter. Maya clenched her jaw, biting down on the inside of her cheek. Elon retrieved his phone from his pocket once more, glancing at the screen briefly before raising his gaze again. I run a foundation that supports individuals with ambitious visions. Individuals who seek to improve the system rather than merely voicing their grievances. He deftly slid a card across the table. If you ever choose to set aside your anger for a moment to create something, feel free to reach out. Maya gazed at the card, her heart racing. She ought to have experienced humiliation, embarrassment, vulnerability. Instead, she sensed an unfamiliar feeling, one that provoked her thoughts. Elon stood, meticulously adjusting his jacket. Oh, and one final note, he remarked as he grasped his keys. Maya steeled herself. Indeed, he wore a sly grin. The short rib lacked a bit of seasoning. With that, he made his way to the exit. Maya lingered for what felt like an eternity, her gaze fixed on the card she held tightly in her hand. She had devoted countless hours to believing she understood him completely, and yet, in that moment, she realized just how mistaken she truly was.